Jasmine, you're on mute.
That might help. Thank you. Greetings. Welcome to the April meeting of the Hudson Valley chapter entitled Common Project Pitfalls. First, the housekeeping. Use the chat for questions and comments and participate in activities. Also, too, if we have a small group, we can definitely come off mute. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on PMI HVC's YouTube channel. And please ensure you are on mute. Sorry, but we do not want to hear what you're cooking for dinner unless you're sharing with everyone. And I'm vegan, so just remember that. And again, greetings. My name is Jasmine T. Clark. I'm your VP of Professional Development. And this is our agenda for this evening. Welcome. We'll have some announcements. We'll do a check-in to make sure everyone's feeling good. We'll have a breakout session just to get everybody engaged. We're doing story time this evening. And then we have our guest speaker and our Q&A from not only then our former VP of Communication, Nancy C. Bedore. And then we'll have some closing remarks. So let's get started. Our Spring Professional Development Day is coming up Friday, May 31st from 10 to 2, and it's virtual. Registration will open soon. And do not worry, we'll have some early bird specials.
Excellent.
April is National Brunch Month, believe it or not, National Pickleball Month, and also National Volunteer Month. So you know what that means. I'm going to ask you guys to volunteer before the night is over. And I want to say hello and welcome to our new members. We have James, Kyrish, and Thomas. Welcome and thank you for joining the PMI Hudson Valley chapter. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to join us, so thank you. We also have a congratulations for our new certifications. We have 3 new PMPs this month. We have Adam, Jason, and Nicole. Again, congratulations. The PMP was not an easy test, and I do not want to do that again. So make sure you attend these meetings and get your PDUs to keep current. And we also have a lot of renewals this month. We have Omadai, and if I mispronounce that, I'm definitely sorry. My apologies. Andrew, Deidre, Dominic, Franco, Jeremy, Joe, and Lawrence. We also have the Mariannes, Michael, Neil, and Tamara. Congratulations, and thanks for renewing your membership. Check-in time. On a scale of cats, how are you guys feeling today? So you can either come off mute, put it in the chat, whatever you guys feel comfortable doing.
Oh, look. Aren't they cute?
Definitely
Me,
a
myself, I'm definitely a 6 and probably a little bit of a 9. But we're going to get through tonight.
I'm into 3. The 3 looks cute.
Actually, Judy, your cat was beautiful. I saw your cat coming through.
Yes, we have 3.
Oh, okay. Mine I have 2 as well. They might make a special guest appearance. Okay, so we have Chris is feeling great. Thanks for doing this. Thanks, Chris, for attending. We have Steve at a 2. Okay. And we also have Mary A at a 2. Excellent. Now it's story time. And of course, we had to do it the Hudson Valley chapter way. So this is our small group activity. We'll break off into breakout sessions to complete this activity. So here are the instructions. Tell us a story the Hudson Valley way. Small group instructions. Each group will be assigned 5 random words about brunch, pickleball, and volunteering. The national months this month. Each group will have 10 minutes to develop their story. Hint, you must use all of your words. And after 10 minutes, we will rejoin the large group, and each group will tell their story. So please, please, please take a screenshot of the next slide. This way, when you go into your small breakout rooms, you will already have your words. So as you see, Group A, sangria, wiffle ball, omelets, servant leader, passion. Group B, mimosas, waffles, doubles, giving back, kitchen. Group C, bouncing, teams, outdoor setting, professional development, and pancakes. Group D, bacon, Bloody Mary, paddle, elections, and underhand. So now just give me a moment while we proceed into our breakout rooms.
I got distracted by my son who thinks he has COVID.
Do you need me to go back?
Have we been
Oh,
assigned?
those are the words. So you'll be assigned a room, and then based on your room, those are your words. So take a picture. I'm pretty sure somebody in your group will. And then now, let me see. Should be joining your rooms momentarily.
I can get to my room pretty well.
Nancy, did you want to go into a room or you just wanted to wait?
I'll wait.
Okay, no problem. How are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. Like I
That's
said,
good. That's good.
looking forward to this. And like I said, right before this call, I was just taking a couple of quick little cheat notes to make sure that I remember a couple things I want to mention at the very end.
Okay.
So,
Excellent.
I'll just relax and, like I said, hear these wonderful stories that are going to come back.
Yeah,
So
right?
This is excellent. This is excellent.
I never asked you, how long is your presentation? About 45 minutes?
About 45 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's
like
fine.
I said, like it might be a little bit longer, a little shorter in case anybody has questions. But the last time I did this, I think I was just about 44 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Tamara, we're actually in small breakout rooms, so I will assign you to a room. Did she go in the room? It says hold.
Yeah, it looks like she's still with us.
Hmm.
But that's an interesting combination: brunch, volunteering, and pickleball.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, what kind of activity can we do? I was like, you know what? Why reinvent the wheel?
Oh no, this is great. I can't wait to be a regular just attendee.
I hope she went in. Let me just check. Just give me 1 second because she was with Jeff. So let me. Tamara, is it not letting you go in the breakout room? That is so weird.
No, it's not. Sorry. I just joined, so I'm a little lost too.
Oh, okay. So the picture is actually, I'm sorry, the picture is actually, you could just take a screenshot of what's on the screen right now.
You need to share again, Jasmine?
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So when you went to check, I think it was.
Oh, when I went to, yeah, gotcha. Sorry, Tamara. Thanks, Nancy. So you could just take a screenshot of this screen, and then I'll try to put you in a breakout room again.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Hopefully it works this time. Staying on hold again.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like she's stuck.
Yeah, because the room is telling me it's two people in that room, but when I join, it's just Jeff. On hold. Okay, I'll try to unassign and then reassign. So I'm giving them just 3 more minutes because it's early still, 6:46.
Yeah, because that will get us just about almost 10 of, and then by the time they all go through their activities, we'll be coming up on 7 p.m.
Yeah, and we're done at 8. Yep, okay, good. Spoken like a true project manager. I
Keep
love
this
it.
moving.
I love
We have
it.
an agenda.
Exactly. I love it.
Sorry, Jasmine. It's not letting me in.
Okay.
It's,
I am so sorry.
It's okay. I'm just sitting there on hold, so I just pushed resume.
Oh, I wonder if, okay, maybe I have to go. That's interesting.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
And I'm sorry I was late and everything is just crazy.
Oh, no worries. Really, it's okay. So no pressure, but if you want to do group D make a story, that'd be great.
So is that what you have to do, is make a story based on that stuff?
Yeah, use all those words.
Oh, okay, I'll think about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. So April is National Pickleball Month, National Volunteer Month, and also National Brunch Month. So all those words are associated with brunch, volunteering, and pickleball.
Okay.
Okay, I'm closing the rooms.
Oh, I think we're going back.
I think, yeah.
All right.
Okay. Nancy and I are over here dying, waiting to hear these stories. So who wants to tell us a story from Group A?
I think that was Judy and me because we were team one.
Yes, so team one is team A. Yeah.
All
And
right.
Chris got the story.
I think so. So it became an obvious story to us that who would not want to have sangria with their omelets at brunch? After which our servant leader would rally a wiffle ball challenge with great passion.
Well, you used all the words, so congratulations to Group 1-A. Yay! Oh, I like that reaction better even. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, so now can we have Group 2, which is B?
Yep, so that was, I'll speak because it was myself and Mary Ann, but her audio was not working. So we did a lot of fast typing. So we had some fun words as well. Our story is that we are project partners, working on a organizational, a project for a charitable organization to give back to the community. And we decided to raise funds by hosting a doubles tennis tournament. And we decided to serve mimosas and waffles, and we made them in the kitchen before the match.
Sounds great.
So I'm not gonna penalize you for kitchen. That's actually a pickleball term, kitchen.
Oh,
I
know nothing
look
about
these things up.
I know nothing about
didn't know
pickleball.
either. I didn't
Mary
know
Ann
either.
actually plays tennis, but I don't know anything about pickleball or
No
tennis,
worries.
really, for that
That
matter.
was a great story nonetheless. Thank you so much. That was
Welcome.
great. Oh, that was really good too. So now can we have Group 3, which is C?
That'll be me. And let me open the thing. Me and Steve were the group 3. And what
Okay.
we came up with is before we started our first teams meeting, we started the day with a delicious pancake breakfast. The meeting was a professional development meeting in an outdoor setting where we were bouncing ideas how the wiffle tournament will be planned. You go.
Excellent.
Okay, so that was good. That was really good. So let's get the reaction. Yay! The applause. And unfortunately, group 4/D, we were having technical difficulties. So Jeff and Tamara, I'm sorry. Do you guys have a story? We might have two from that group, hopefully.
I have one that I wrote because we never were in the same room.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
And
trying.
I couldn't get out. And then when I left, it wanted to update and it was a big disaster.
Sorry. Hopefully you
Typical.
had a Bloody Mary. Sorry.
With some bacon.
I don't know anything about pickleball, so if you were expecting me to know something about pickleball, you didn't get that. But I have a story for you anyway.
Okay.
It was going to be a great day. I awoke to my favorite breakfast, bacon, eggs, and a Bloody Mary. I knew the chapter elections were happening later in the day, and I needed to get some exercise before then. I grabbed my canoe and a paddle and headed out to my favorite lake. I headed back and was ready for the elections. Unfortunately, one of the candidates made an underhand comment at another, and a fight broke out. It wasn't a great day after all.
Very good,
Say
Jeff. Very
bonus
good.
points for using multiple words. Use the election twice. I like the creativity. I love the creativity. So let me just give you a round of applause. That was great, Jeff.
-2 points for being an overachiever.
Now I
Love
take it
I
that
love it.
I'm glad I'm not in
Paddle-
any of your classes, Chris.
Fight. Sorry.
paddle and underhand must be pickleball terms.
Yes, it is.
I don't know anything about pickleball either.
It is. So next time I do this, I'll make sure I highlight which one is which, but I still love the creativity. So Tamara, did you come up with something? No
I
pressure.
think Jeff did a great job, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you so much for participating in story time. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. So now I want to turn this over to Nancy and Common Project Pitfalls. Yes, thank you so much, Nancy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And thank you, PMI Hudson Valley chapter, for letting me talk. I'm very excited about this. I had reached out to Jasmine back in December saying if, she got stuck on a given month and she needed somebody to fill in, I was ready, willing, and able. And she contacted me in early January and says, "You're on for April." So I was very excited about that. So thank you. Welcome, everyone. And hopefully, like I said, some of these things are a little obvious. But for those of us who are project managers and we go through a lot of these, rushing to get a project done, we're dealing with deadlines and all. There's a couple of things that just kind of sneak up and bite you when you're sidetracked a little bit. So there's a couple of things that, with one of a project that I did in IBM that really hit home. It was probably like one of the biggest failures yet one of the biggest successes of my career. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please, Jasmine. So I'm going to give you some background. I'll try to keep it as low level technical as possible. It was an IT project. And then we're going to talk about setting priorities and how setting priorities keeps you focused. How to measure success, which sounds very obvious until you get into a position where you're not really measuring what you're hoping to measure. Stakeholder communications, we'll find out over communication is much better than under communication. And then my favorite one of all times is solving the right problem, which seems intuitive, but it's not always so. So with the next slide, please, Jasmine. So in IBM, over the years, a lot of teams worked in their own little area, and a lot of applications were built to serve specific purposes. So the job that I was entrusted with my team was to go ahead and really streamline the infrastructure, stop the reduction of duplicate data entry because we kept entering the same data in multiple places. We needed to reduce cost because our server charges and license fees were getting out of control. And we really wanted to go ahead and have a more focused approach and look at our strategic assets that we were trying to bring forward as being known as the master data for hardware and software and services. So we took on a $5 million project. It was for 4 years and it had 3 phases. So the last phase, the first 2 phases, a couple of little hiccups here and there, things that we just tweaked, things were good. So by the last phase, I'm feeling a little confident, probably a little, hey, we got this. Not our first time. We're an experienced team. We already got 2 phases out the door. And then reality hit. So here's my story of a project that basically fell over and what we did to get it back on track and how we overcome the challenge. Next slide, please, Jasmine. So I am not going to test anybody on this at the end, so you don't have to memorize anything here. So this was our previous architecture. And the boxes that are in green are what we consider to be our strategic applications that we wanted to focus on going forward. The column that has the ePIMS software, the gray boxes of a column, software PIMS, ePIMS hardware, hardware PIMS. This is the set of applications where not only did we pull in data from our strategic applications, but then we'd go ahead and type in the same data. We wouldn't pull in all the data. There was just a lot of people involved, a lot of retyping. A lot of retyping, of course, leads to a lot of poor quality of the data because there are different people who enter the data in the green boxes and different people entering them into the gray boxes. And, it just kind of made things very, very challenging. And then to complicate this even more, we pulled it into this, what we called our master material system, which was an SAP system, which stands for System Applications and Products. And we pulled it into there, and our version of this material master SAP system was like driving a Cadillac when you really only need like a skateboard. It had so much functionality that we didn't use. We were paying a really high license fee for it. And again, data would get modified at this point in time. So by the time, if you look at the yellow boxes, who are our key downstreams, by the time the data got into these key downstreams, they didn't always match what was in our 2 green boxes on the right. So we decided, okay, we've got to do something here. We've got to clean this up. We've got to start saving money. We've got to make things a little more crisper. So Jasmine, if you can move to the next slide. So this is what it became. So as you can see, we dropped down significantly. We got rid of lots of different servers. We got rid of, lots of support people. We got rid of data entry people. And I shouldn't say get rid of, we actually moved them to other areas. Some of them came onto different projects to help there, such as the 2 items in the darker green box. And what we ended up doing was collapsing a lot of the data that we had. We collapsed it into our 2 strategic applications. We called one EACM, that was hardware and services. We called the other one SDPI, that was all our software. So basically anything that was sold by IBM would get entered into EACM or SDPI and flowed through the system to the downstreams that need to go ahead and help with ordering, billing, invoicing, distribution. And that was our key downstreams that you see highlighted in yellow. So what we ended up doing was taking our own repository, which we called reference data. And it actually was a reference data hub where we pulled in all this data. It was transformed into the SAP structure and saved. And then we would go ahead and generate an IDOC to our key downstream partners. And an IDOC is an intermediate document, very similar to XML. Structure is a little bit different. It deals with segments instead of keywords, but pretty much the thoughts are the same of how it transfers data. And like I said, we were good to go. We had already done configured software, we did configured hardware, and the only thing that was left for this phase was to go ahead and do entitled software. And entitled software in IBM language is the software that runs on all the mainframes. And that has a very different structure than hardware, just as complex, and sometimes a little more complex because there's things such as entitlement and different price points. But we were confident that we knew what we needed to do. We had talked to everybody we needed to do, and we were off and running. Next slide, please, Jasmine. So we started this phase fourth quarter of 2016 after we did phase 2, and we planned on deploying in fourth quarter, early October of 2017. So with that, we were working, trying to get all our designs done, because at this time we weren't 100% agile. We still had a little bit of waterfall processing in here. So we were kind of a hybrid where we did a lot of designs back in 2014, 2015, some in 2016, and now going into 2017, we're finalizing our designs, getting it to be developed, getting it into test, working with our end users, and then getting ready to roll it out the door. So our 2017, we're pretty much locking down what we're going to do. As with all projects, I was up against the same items. Our 3 constraints: time, cost, and scope. So here I am, last phase of the project, starting to run out of money, starting to run out of time. And the scope I'm looking at, and I'm like, okay, we can't do all of this. We're going to have to go ahead and really figure out what we need to do to make sure we hit this October date. So in early 2017, what also happened during this time frame is the organization that I was in was leading up another type of project, and they decided to borrow from me my enterprise architect, my data SME, and my manager. So these 3 people, and it's just kind of going back to your project management 101, what happens when key resources leave the project? So I'm in a little bit of a panic mode, but not too bad because, again, we've already done 2 phases of this. How difficult can this be? So we're like, okay, these people have left the project. I still have team members that can cover. So we're off and we start investigating. And there was one function that we were just struggling to try to get our arms around, getting it designed, getting it to development so it could be developed and tested by October. So we had a couple of team members that were spending a lot of time on translation. And IBM used to do a lot more translation than they do today down at the master data level. They now do it more on individual pages. They'll do it on invoices, but most of the data is now kept in English. But at this time in 2017, there was still a functionality built into this master data program that did translation. And it did translation of what was called the marketing name. So an example of a marketing name would be like Z16, mainframe server, high end with Linux 1, And most of the translations, when you have so many items that are copyrighted, there's not a lot that gets translated. And the translation we were doing was into Japanese. So we spent 2 months, we're trying to find somebody we can talk to that's using the current translation tool that can go ahead and help us define the new tool in the new environment. And we struggled. We could not find anybody. We would find a manager and they're like, oh yeah, well, this person, I'm not in this area anymore. Go talk to this person. And we just kind of really got the runaround. So I started thinking like, oh my gosh, here it is, March. I still don't have a design. I still don't know what I'm going to do. I'm behind because I've just lost 3 people from my team. I said, what are we going to do here to go ahead and try to get back on track? So after spending 2 months digging in, trying to find contacts, I finally said, okay, let's go back. How many translations are done? Could I actually do this manually for a period of time to buy myself a little bit of wiggle room. So we come back, and as you can see on the side here, these were our numbers. So in 2014, when we started the project, we had over 12,000 translations done in 2014. By 2015, the number drops dramatically. We're down to 200. By the time we get to 2016, we had 43. First quarter of 2017, I had 3. So I'm like, okay, if I multiply that out, okay, we're talking 12. We're talking 12 translations I will need to do in 2017 at this rate. I think we can find somebody who can translate 12 items for us and we can update them. So I took this to management. I said, look, I've got to change the scope. There's no way I'm going to be able to stay within my cost and time unless I change the scope. And management was fine once I showed them the information saying there is really no need for this. I would have saved myself 2 months of time if, as soon as my team members started to tell me, hey, guess what? We can't find anybody who uses this tool. The last person who did the translation isn't with the company anymore. I should have asked for these numbers then so I could have made a better decision sooner in the process to go ahead and say, you know what? Let's put this out of the MVP, our most viable product. Let's put it in the backlog. And if we can get to it, we'll get to it once we get all the higher priorities done ahead of time. So my lesson learned here was the fact that always check your numbers. Are you really still looking at the right priorities? When you have a long-term project, always go back and revisit the priorities because they always change. Jasmine, next slide. So then the next thing was a measure of success. And everybody has measurable goals. We go into every project that we do, and we know that we want something, that's going to be faster or easier or less keystrokes, so the one thing that we missed here was the fact that we all knew that the current process with all the hops of data that it was making, would take anywhere from 24 to 36 hours to get data from those strategic applications to flow through, get updated in the other system, flow to the next system, get updated in that system, and then finally flow to the end result. So we knew it was slow. We knew that it needed to be streamlined. And what I ended up doing was the fact that I did not take the time in the beginning of the project to actually measure out how much time it took to go from point A to point B. Everybody said, 24 to 36 hours. What I should have done was gone back and said, okay, 24 to 36. Okay, who's involved? Each end user, how long does it take you to enter your piece of the data? Okay, here we have another piece of data that's being re-entered into another application. How long does that take? How many people am I using so far? How many people are supporting each of these hops along the way? So, as I looked at this, the one thing I did have was the fact that I did have defects. I knew how many defects I had. We always managed the number of defects that we had. So I had that history, but I didn't have the wow factor of saying I went from, 24 to 36 hours down to 4 to 8 hours, which would have been something to roll up to upper management because I would have had the proof to say, wow, look how much we improved this by getting rid of all that stuff in the middle. So always think about what's the story you want to sell and what metrics are you going to use to sell that story? So like I said, one of our items was data quality that I had, but I never identified how to go ahead and show the fact that we were going to be so much more faster. And then eventually I was able to prove that we were cheaper. But at this point in time, as we closed the project, we rolled out the application. I never took the time to actually, time how long it took a product to get all the way through to the end result where it could be invoiced. So think of those things as you go through the project multiple times. Okay, next slide, Jasmine. Then the other very obvious, but sometimes you just have to step back and ask yourself, does it work? So one of the items was the fact that I focused on my key downstream partners. We were really doing this job for them. They're the ones that kind of said, look, we have a lot of data quality issues. We think some of it's caused because there's multiple people entering the data, that we've got a bunch of hops. It takes a long time for us to get fixes, so we looked at this, and I mistakenly, probably because overconfidence from the first two phases that went very well, I figured that's it. That's all we're changing. I don't have to think about anyone else. Well, as time goes on, as we go to the next slide, which we're not going to go to yet, I'll show you where this assumption had gotten me into a lot of trouble. So one of the things that we did find is, and we did roll this out, that would have really helped us with some quick checks just to make sure that we really did do all the steps we wanted to do when we did the cutover from the old system to the new system. We wanted to have some simple checks. We ended up identifying them. Like I said, I deployed in October. By November, I had figured out what these checks should be. But if I had done these checks in October, I would have saved myself a lot of headaches. So there's a lot of things that can be done. You just look at saying, what am I changing? What's really going on here? How can I prove that I'm still working? A lot of times just flowing the data through, you're just looking at the one path. You're not looking at what else you could potentially be impacting. And you want to go ahead and say, okay, I'm flowing data into this table. I'm expecting to get 100 data records in here. Oh my gosh, I got 1,000. What happened? So these simple little checks, which many of us take for granted, just because, hey, I watched the data go from point A to point B. Everything looks great, but then when you look behind the scenes and you're seeing that you're expecting, 1,000 records to be touched and 5,000 records are touched, or only 5 records are touched. These are different items that you can do to say, hey, something's not right here. We've got to dig a little bit more and find out what's going on. So, like I said, these little simple checks to say, what am I doing? How is it going to work? What do I show myself to know that I'm seeing what I expect, not only in the front end, but also in the back end? Okay, Jasmine, next slide. Stakeholder communication. So when we were back in the January timeframe, and I lost a couple of people from my team, and we spent 2 months worrying about translation when we didn't have to, we ended up missing a very key stakeholder. So out of the yellow boxes I showed you, there was actually another little box off to the side. Very quiet stakeholder, just kind of went about its business. Didn't even know we were making the change because they just kind of took our data and ran with it. And what we found out was, because of the way we implemented the solution, is the fact that we ended up breaking this stakeholder. They were receiving incorrect data. So when we heard this, we were just like, what do you mean you're receiving incorrect data? So they ran a weekly report, and the first report had about 10 or 15 products on it that fell off the list. And the list that they had is used by the entitled software tech line area of IBM, where they work to go ahead and sell the Z series software, and they have catalogs, and they use these weekly reports to help them check pricing, making sure what was an entitlement, what wasn't, who could use what. So this weekly report was very key to their business. So the first week, like I said, 12 items fell off. They weren't too concerned. They called it to our attention, and we're like, okay, we'll go back. And we looked, and we saw a couple of little things with the data. And one of the things looked like it was actually data that was entered incorrectly by end user. So we're getting to the end of October, and we're still kind of, going along thinking it's like, okay, stakeholders broken, but it's just a couple, items of bad data. We make it a couple corrections, we'll be fine. Well, on Halloween of 2017, the world fell apart. Our stakeholder who generated this weekly report that was used by Techline to generate quotes and do sales and provide information to our business partner and people wanting to buy information. We went from a handful of products that fell off the list to the entire list was no longer valid. So we went into panic mode. We got escalated. So on November 1st, I get called to my management team and basically told that an escalation had happened, that the Techline team was basically saying they wanted us to back out and go back to the old system. They were not going to tolerate not having a good report. So some cooler heads got involved and prevailed, and they said, okay, they would tolerate me, give me a month before they insisted I go back to the old system. Now, deep down inside, I knew that we really could not go back. We kind of could, but it wasn't the right decision for us or for IBM. So I needed to come up with, how do I handle this escalation? You know, because now we know we've got a stakeholder that was missed. We've got to fix this stakeholder. We've got to get their report pristine, better than it's ever been, and we've got to go forward. The stakeholder said they could use something from, you know, before they went over, but by December 1st, they needed a new report because they were going into year end and getting ready for all the January quotes. So I had a month. I had 30 days to turn our broken application around. So I met with the team twice a day. We met early in the morning. I had a team in Boulder that was willing to get up and be online and start working at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we discussed any new items that came in during the overnight. We got it on the list. We assigned owners. The 3 people I lost earlier in the year, I was able to pull them back in. You know, I worked with their management team. They were able to come and help and pitch in. And we had another call later in the afternoon at 4 o'clock where we went through what was fixed for the day, who had what taken care of, who, you know, what was ready to go into production to be tested. You know, we were very focused on getting this fixed as quickly as possible. Then at 4:30, I met with my management team to take them through the updates of what we had. And then at 5 p.m. every day, I got to meet a lot of vice presidents in IBM. So I would present to them what our status was, where we were, what we were working on, and how close we were to getting the problems solved. The stakeholder that we missed, their developer, was more than willing to work with us. And what we had found was during some of the hops where data was being sent from our strategic applications and then re-entered in along the way, the data that was being re-entered was completely different than the data that we had in the strategic system. That there were rules built in there that changed data that didn't match what we had in the initial system. So the operational person from the stakeholder worked with us every single day. We worked 7 days a week, except for Thanksgiving. We were working 12 to 14-hour days. We were working 8 to 10 hours on the weekends. And we just kept pushing, trying to get everything resolved. By the end of the day, we had about 12 key problems that were identified. A majority of them were right around this one stakeholder and the different areas that they were broken in. So we focused on that. We made sure that we got them taken care of. We tested with them and all. So by the time we got to Thanksgiving, we were all able to enjoy our Thanksgiving. We only had a few items left. So on November 29th, the team is very happy. We've gotten everything on our list resolved. So I go to the 5 o'clock meeting with all the vice presidents. I go through the list, I give the status, and I said, there's no new problems. We're good. And the people from TechLine turned around and they said, well, you may think you're good, but now we have this problem, this problem, this problem, and this problem. And my heart just sank. I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, I might as well start looking for a new job now. My career at IBM is over. So fortunately, there was a cooler head that prevailed, somebody who worked with not only me and my team, but also with this TechLine team. And he stepped up and he says, well, he says, Ellen, he says, yep, you have these problems. He says, but I'll tell you right now, those problems can't be solved by Nancy. You know, and I finally was like, phew, sigh of relief, you know. So November 30th, we attend the call. Nobody from the other stakeholder showed up at all. So our calls finished by the end of November. By December 1st, they had what they needed. They had the good report that was coming in. They were able to support all their year-end activities, and they were ready to be prepared for all the quotes that they needed to get out in January of 2018. So, like I said, a very stressful period of my time, you know, in my career here, but it did end up working for the best. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. So then I'll go back to solve the right problem, which sounds very obvious again, you know, so this isn't necessarily an IBM issue, but this is something I kept with me, and I need to think about this more and more every project we attend. So I'm first out of college. I have a new job. I'm 22 years old, and I'm working for a company where we wrote software for nuclear power plants to track the disposal of radioactive waste. So this is in the age of personal computers. They're just coming on board. Everybody had been working on mainframes, and we come up with a solution that can run on a PC. So, but to do this, we needed multiple disks to load this program onto the PC. So my job was to make these disks, and usually for the full set of the application, every time we had an update, we sent out the full thing, and I was responsible for the little batch job that popped up a little message and said, please insert disk number 2. And of course, they were all pretty labels and all, because my new job, you know, I've got to do everything right. And, you know, the next thing it said, you know, put in, you know, disk 3. So things are great, you know, but I will tell you, this was on a 5 1/4 floppy drive. And I'm sure there's people on this call that weren't even born by the time some of us were using the 5 1/4 floppy drive. I also know there's people on this call who definitely know what I'm talking about. And if they looked really hard, they probably still have a 5 1/4 floating around the house somewhere. So I used the 5 1/4. And so my boss comes in and says, hey, you know, there's one of our end users called me up and says, the disks we send him don't work. Make him a new set. I'm like, okay, so maybe something got scanned, something happened. I make him a new set. I try it out on my machine. Everything looks good. Package them up. We FedEx them out to the end user. He gets it, calls the next day, talks to my boss. My boss comes back to me and says, Nancy, I don't know what you're doing, but it's not working. You know, he still can't get it to work. Don't know what you did, but he can't get your disks to work. So now I'm in panic mode. I'm like, oh my God, my first job, what's going to happen? So I decide, instead of installing it on my machine, I'm going to install it on the secretary's machine, because she doesn't have the application. She's a brand new machine. There can't be anything to influence. I install it, I test it, everything looks great. So I go ahead and take this set of disk, we send it out, FedEx, get it the next day. My boss comes in and says, you're going to call him. You know, you need to talk to him. He just called me, left me a message. It's still not working. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm besides myself. So I call up the end user and I said, okay, just walk me through everything you're doing. So he tells me, I go ahead, I put the disk in, says put in disk 1, I put in disk 1. He says, then the message comes up on the screen, tells me it does a bunch of stuff, says now put in disk 2. So I put in disk 2. He says, goes through, everything is great. He says, then it comes up, says, put in disk 3. And I said, okay, but this is where my problem is. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now I know there's a problem with disk 3. And he turns around and he says to me, in all seriousness, he says, I try really hard, but it won't fit in the slot. So for those of us who use the old PCs and the 5 1/4, is when they were single-sided, you could actually put in multiple floppies. He never took the previous one out. So I sat there and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, okay, let's back up. Let's start all over again. I said, do a Control-C, kill it. Let's start over again. So I go ahead and I tell him, put disk 1 in. Let's start it all over again. Put disk 1 in. I said, okay, now take the disk out. He takes the disk out, puts disk 2 in, takes it out. We got through the install. My boss comes in. He says, did you get the guy fixed? So I told him a story. My boss thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. But I went 3 days thinking that, oh my gosh, I here I am fresh out of college. I'm new at this. I'm inexperienced. And I learned right then and there that if I had talked to this person on the first day, I could have solved the problem, because there was never a problem with the disks. It was a problem with the end user, who I figured was computer literate, but was not even close. He was used to using, a keyboard and a green screen. He was not used to using a PC and didn't know you were supposed to take the disk out, when you were installing multiple disk software. So that was a lesson to me, that always try to talk to the person who has the problem and make sure you're solving the right problem. So the moral of the story is, it's like, it was not the disks. It was actually the end user issue. Problem exists between, person and keyboard, type deal. So from then on, like I said, I've always tried to show me what your problem is. Tell me what your problem is. Don't give it to me secondhand. And that's one of the things I've always tried to rely on, throughout the rest of my career. And once I got to IBM, is to really understand what the problem is that people are trying to solve. Many of us work with people who have a problem, and all of a sudden they think they're an architect or a developer, and they'll tell you a solution, but they don't tell you what the problem is. So this is a very similar thought, that you want to know really what the problem is. And it's one of the things that we learn about in the PMBOK, is the fact that, go after the problem, and there's just, it's too easy for people to, by nature, to go ahead and try to solve the problem for you, when instead of just telling you what the problem is, where you might have a way to solve the problem better. Okay, Jasmine, next slide. So in summary, like I said, the key thing, always know what problem you're trying to solve. Like I said, it sounds very simple, but times you just have to step back and saying, am I really going after the right problem, or am I trying to force a solution that may not be solving the problem that's really there? Another thing is, know who all the stakeholders are. As I said before, it's better to over communicate, drive more people crazy with more knowledge, than to not share enough. I think if we spent a little more time doing some of our checkpoints and all, I think we would have found this other stakeholder that was kind of off to the side, quiet, doesn't have the visibility. We would have found out that they were a key recipient of this data that we were updating, and we would have gotten them engaged way sooner than after we had rolled out the final phase of the project. Other things, think about how you're solving the problem. Always ask yourself at the beginning of the problem, at the beginning of the project, I have this, I'm solving this problem. How am I going to prove that I've solved the problem? What are my key items to show that it's been solved? Next item, like I said, prove that the problem is solved. How do we do that? And that's what you work towards. You go ahead and you want to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I want to work towards doing this, because the rest of the pieces begin to fall in place when you've made those decisions and you've pushed proving how you're solving the problem to the forefront. And then what is critical in determining your success? Again, like I said, 20/20 hindsight, I should have spent time to take a timing. because that had that wow factor. It would have been very impressive to end users to say, this is what I've done, look how much faster we are. And this is how we're getting, the item done, getting data out to market faster, getting our turnaround time, fixing problems faster. This is what we really wanted to raise the flag about and say, this is what we did. Data quality was great, but we wanted to show that not only did we improve our data quality, but, we took a chunk of time out of this entire process. Okay, Jasmine, next slide. So for those of us who remember Paul Harvey, there was the rest of the story. So a couple of the key items that I wanted to touch on, just to see what happened, down the road after we had rolled out this project. We had a very successful year end. We only had like 2 issues that the team had to work on. And it was really a data issue that we worked, and we helped the data entry team figure out what they needed to do, that it really wasn't related to the new application and the new process we had rolled out. So we got through year end. But some of the things that we did is the translation. All the time we spent on translation, how it was one of our key priorities at the start of the project. We deployed this project 6.5 years ago. Not a single person in those 6.5 years has reached out to me to ask me about Japanese translations. So I made the right decision. I just wish I had made it a little bit sooner. So with metrics, the return on investment originally was to have our 5 million return on investment to return it back in 4 years. We were spending on servers and people and supporting all these different applications between 1.4 and $1.5 million a year. We recovered our savings and dramatically reduced our budget starting early in 2018, and we were able to get our return on investment in 3 years instead of 4. And the reason for that is one of the items that we had that I was able to track was the data quality. The data quality was, I don't want to say it was poor, but there was actually an end-to-end data quality team. This end-to-end team used to meet weekly to review problems that they were having, what they needed to fix, who needed to be involved, who needed to help with testing, and they kind of drove, these defects all the way through the system to find out where it was breaking, getting it fixed, putting in requirements to say we had to do, this type of fix, or we have to make this type of fix, and within 6 months of us rolling out this application, the number of defects that the end-to-end team was reviewing on a weekly basis dropped so much that they went to every other week. 3 months after that, they went to once a month. By the end of the year, they disbanded the end-to-end process altogether because there just wasn't enough defects coming through the system that required team members from all the different applications to sit on a call and try to solve problems. So, and the reason for that was the fact that we stopped taking out all the duplicate data entry. We stopped having, data being introduced along the way. We stopped having the ability to make changes late in the cycle without it going back to the beginning. So that was one of the things that really did pan out, that showed the level of success that we had, was the fact that we did have this data quality team that we ended up disbanding because of the fact that our quality of data had improved dramatically with the new rollout of the last phase. Some of the other things that we've done now that I've incorporated across the board is, does it work? I now maintain what I call my golden list of data, or my checks, my sanity checks. And with every project we do now, I have this golden list of data that I push through the system because I expect the same outcome no matter what changes we make. These data items, these products that I have identified, cover a wide range of the different types of products that IBM sells, that covers all these different items. So we can go ahead and say, okay, is everybody getting this data properly? Is it processing properly? And it's kind of our check to make sure that everything is still on the up and up. The stakeholders, when I had the lessons learned, the person who escalated us did attend the lesson learned. And she basically said that she was very impressed that we were able to fix all the defects we identified within the year, within the month of November. She really thought that she was going to ask us to back out and have us go back to the old system by December 1st. And she was so pleased at how we were able to work as a team, identify it, find the priorities, find the biggest, impact items, attack them first, and how we managed to go through the list that about 2 years later, she actually reached out to me and had an opening for a project manager on her team, and she wanted to know I was interested. So for somebody who escalated me on Halloween of 2017, by 2020, she is trying to offer me a job. So that was kind of, I felt was a good measure of success of not only myself, but the team that I had behind me that was so focused on getting this done and done properly. And then, like I said, as far as making sure we're solving the right problems, one of the things that, like I said, we always try to do is mock up something, and a lot of people say, I don't have time to do a mock up. We have found that if we take time in the beginning of a project, mock something up before we start the developers writing any code, and we try to get something, it gives the end users and our stakeholders something to look at and say, oh, wait, this isn't going to work. Or, yes, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. This is what I need. So overall, despite the fact that 2017 of November was absolutely a lost month for me in my life, I learned a lot. I did crisp up a lot of my procedures and processes. I've carried them forward. And like I said, at the end of the day, we did go ahead and deliver what we wanted to do. We delivered higher quality than we expected. The people who escalated us ended up respecting us to be able to set things right. And like I said, it ended up being a win-win situation, not only for my organization, but for IBM as well. So like I said, we had a great return on investment. We reduced our data quality issues. We were getting items, down to the key, applications faster. And like I said, we have continued on this path of simplifying. There are more things that we've done that weren't necessarily on the pictures that I showed you, but there's other things that we've done, not as big as this effort, but to go ahead and, streamline, reduce cost, and try to go ahead and, like I said, make things happen as close to real time as possible. With that, any questions? And just to let people know, people are on mute if you do have a question.
It was a great presentation and very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing. And what happened to your SAP system? It looks like it was no longer in the picture.
What happened to what?
The SAP system. I didn't see it.
We actually took it out. We took out the SAP system. And the reason we did that, we actually ended up doing a data stage SAP pack solution coming out of our data hub, which is just a DB2 repository.
Yeah, that's what it looked like on your diagram.
Yep. And we have tried multiple times. So this is kind of an add-on note. We have tried multiple times to get an SAP solution for our 2 strategic applications for software, hardware, and services. And we just don't fit the model. IBM does not fit without a lot of customization for the in SAP, which kind of defeats the purpose. So we have looked, last year we spent a lot of time looking at stuff. What can we use, especially now we're going to S/4HANA for SAP, and there's just nothing out there because our models for software, hardware, not necessarily services, but especially entitled software is very, very complex. And it doesn't fit well. But we've tried. We've tried.
Yes, I'm working on converting our system to S/4HANA. It's challenging.
Oh, to say the least. So that's one of our key projects as well. And that's where my golden list has been very useful.
So I definitely echo Judy's sentiments, but saying that was a great and actually very interesting and informative presentation. So thank you so much. You did give us a lot of lessons learned, but I guess what would be your top lesson learned? What would you do over if you could?
What I would do over if I could, and that's a great question, Jasmine. What I would do over is I would have stopped at each phase and done a full revisit of not only the scope, but the stakeholders at each step along the way. And I think by doing that, there was a possibility that the one stakeholder I missed might have been shaken out if we had done that. Because when we did it in 2014, we kind of like, and that was also the problem of being a hybrid model, that we were just starting to get into agile. We still had a lot of that waterfall type thought process. So we did like, here are all the pieces. We're going to fix all of this. And then we never took the time to step back and say, okay, does this really still apply? Has the players changed? And we did, I think if I had done that and made the team sit down and really think about what we were doing for the last phase, I think we might have been a little more prepared and not been hit with a major escalation on Halloween. So I think, like I said, that would be my biggest takeaway is, even in Agile, the one advantage of Agile is the fact that, with the sprints, you can pivot quickly, and now we kind of do it more because it's just kind of ingrained in our process, because we're Agile. But it always, when you have large projects like this, that's going to have several iterations, span over months or years, it always helps to find a period of time just to step back and say, okay, does everything that I knew a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, is that still valid? And we find things change, the business change. I mean, Judy will laugh at this, and I'm sure Chris probably remembers as well, and so does Jeff, that there are times that, we had a rush to get something done, we roll it out, we make the date, and then 6 months later, they're like, that really wasn't what we wanted. Can you back it out? So we've all been there, and I just think that, because things change so quickly, you want to stop and really reevaluate.
Thank you for that. So I have one other question. How do you turn an escalation into a job offer? What's the secret?
And interesting enough is the woman that had escalated me, like I said, Halloween, she wanted me hung up and out to dry. And she honestly thought with, the problems we had on the list, there was no way we would ever get them solved in a month, and the fact that she did get wind of the fact that I was meeting with the team twice a day, I was meeting with my management team, I was having breakout sessions, we worked almost around the clock for a month straight. That gained her respect. The fact that, I just wasn't a fly by night project manager, who's never done this before. I think she saw the fact that I could take something that fell over, and get it back on track, and like I said, blood, sweat, and tears, my entire team was with me the entire way. You know, like I said, when I came in and took their opinions, we discussed priorities, you know, it was a group effort, but kind of like the quarterback, you know, I got the blame, I got the glory, you know, so it's the pluses and minuses of the job. But I could not have done it without my wonderful team.
So thank you so much. Do we have any questions in the chat?
I have a question for you, Nancy. I'm
Sure.
curious about, I don't know, like getting approvals to share this information.
What I ended up doing, the fact that this was done so many years ago, Jeff, I went to my manager and he talked to his manager. And the fact that I wasn't calling out anybody's name, many of the people who were involved have since retired. You know, so it was kind of, nobody felt that it was really, you know, exposing IBM negatively or really positively. It was just a story that happened and this is what it was. So that's, like I said, I did reach out to my management team for approval before doing this.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was curious about. I like this as a set of topics or an idea for a topic because I think it's nice to learn about stuff, but there's nothing like hearing about it, actuals, you know what I mean? And, you know, I understand this was a long time ago. I was, I guess, leading down the question path of figuring out how we could talk about stuff more current, just because, you know, the problems you're experiencing on a project currently are probably not that different from what others are experiencing in the time frame. But I get that there would be, you know, risks or issues with sharing. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and like I said, I was concerned about this, and that's why, like I said, why I had gone to, you know, my management to say, you know, I wanted to take this forward because I think it's an excellent learning opportunity because this was a real life scenario, you know,
Right.
and you know, and it's like many of the things that we do, it's like, you know, they come up with scenarios and, you know, there's got to be a little grain of truth in them somewhere, you know, and that's why when we looked at this, I explained to my manager the different components, you know, we kind of felt comfortable because one, this was 6+ years ago behind us now. And two, you know, many of the players have either left IBM or have retired. So, you
Sure.
know, I felt comfortable doing that.
Cool. Thanks.
But if you want a list of names, no, only kidding.
I would definitely like a list of names. So I think my only thing that I would have liked to have seen from this presentation was maybe like show and tell, a floppy disk.
You know, and believe it or not, you know, I used to have one for the longest time on my desk. And I don't know if I finally threw it out because I used to remind myself of that. And I went in and I checked my old briefcase up in the attic and all I had was 3.5s. I didn't have a 5 1/4. So I was really hoping to find an old 5 1/4 that I could have held up and said, guess what? This was it. This almost
I
ended
still
my
can't.
career before I started.
I know I still can't get over that. He was actually but you said you gave him 3 discs. So why was it that this third disc was the issue? He had to take
Well,
the second disc out, the first one to put the second one in.
oh
No?
no, not the original PCs. The
Oh,
original
okay.
PCs probably had about a 1/4 inch gap. So
Oh,
you
okay.
could actually, and that's when I found out. He was like, no matter how hard I try, I just can't get the third disc in. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't get it in? And that's when I realized that he was not taking the old ones out. So, you know, so then I changed my instructions to go ahead and say, please remove disc 1 before inserting disc 2. So you've got to remember, which I think for some of us who are technical, sometimes we forget that our audience may not have the same knowledge that we do. And not that, and it's probably one of the reasons, you know, DOS for Dummies, Windows for Dummies was such a big hit, was because of the fact that people like to hear things on their level, you know. So that was also probably another lessons learned during the the disc fiasco for me, was not assuming everybody had my knowledge.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to say thank you so much because again, although this experience happened from 2017, it's still relevant today. Yeah, maybe not the floppy, maybe even not a CD-ROM because computers don't even have that anymore. But it's just it's very relatable content and the way you delivered it, it was flawless. And it was technical at one point, but you kind of warned us.
Yep.
And from there, it was not technical. So I do appreciate that. So I hope everyone got those gems because I definitely did. Again, I'm still trying to get the secret on how you go from escalation to a job offer in 3 years because that's just phenomenal. So, but thank you so much, Nancy. This was a great presentation. But thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And thank you very much, everyone, for having me. This was very enjoyable.
Thank you. So we're almost done. Not quite yet. We just have one or two screens left, and then we can get out of here. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Nancy. That was great. Appreciate you. And for our next meeting is actually coming up shortly. And the registration announcement will follow. Leveraging project management skills for success, presented by Jeremiah Hammond Jr. That's actually taking place on Tuesday, May 7th. From 6:30 to 8 p.m. again, Eastern time. Tamara, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was pushing buttons.
Oh, no worries, no worries, no worries. Just want to make sure you didn't have a question. So
Okay.
thank you again for attending tonight's meeting. Have you thought about how you can make an impact with HVC? If you're interested in volunteering with the Hudson Valley chapter, please contact the interim volunteer coordinator, and that is the email address at the bottom. Again, that is our YouTube channel. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. And please note, if you are a member, well, doesn't matter if you're a member or non-member, anyone here tonight, as long as you use your PMI ID at registration, your PDU will be submitted for you automatically. Just please allow 5 to 7 business days to process that. And again, thank you. I'm Jasmine T. Clark, VP of Professional Development. If you ever needed to get into contact with me, VP Professionals Dev. I always try to say development, but it's VP Pro Dev at pmihvc.org. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next month and have a great evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Thanks.